Hi everyone, welcome to Chalchitra Talks. I'm Vaani, and this week we have a guest with us on the book recommendation series. His name is Anand Gandhi, and he's an Indian filmmaker, producer, director, writer, and also an entrepreneur. He has directed, co written, and produced some of the finest works in Indian cinema like Tumbad, An Insignificant Man, and The Ship of Theseus. A few days ago, I had a chance to sit with him and discuss about books and reading, and he recommended not only books but also music and poetry. So let's just jump right in. Hi, Anand. How are you?
Hi, hi.
It's so good to have you on the channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Anand, as I had mentioned in our email, I will mostly take recommendations from you, given that we're a recommendation based platform. So, first of all, what was the first book that you read in your childhood that has stayed with you all these years?
So the book that really changed my life was the one I was recommended by my school librarian when I was 7 years old, and the book was called Children's Knowledge Bank, Volume Two. It was a book published by Pustak Mahal, and it had all kinds of amazing questions. I remember the first time that I opened the book and I flipped through it, and it had questions like how does an aeroplane fly, or how does a bird chirp, and why does a bird chirp, for that matter, and how did planets emerge, or how did life emerge, and it had just these incredible questions answered a page at a time. So these were like really minuscule early TED talks, if you will, that I was coming across. It just
Yeah.
completely blew my mind. I really begged my mother to buy me one of these, and she saved up. She had it was 18 rupees, I remember, back in the day, and it was very expensive, an encyclopedia. So she saved up and she bought me the volume two, and then she set a bunch of tasks for me if I were to you know
Yeah.
study this much and do that much, or not do this or not do that. There were all kinds of negotiations, and then for each one of these thresholds, she bought me the rest of the volumes. And these books were really the most important uh, uh, piece of literature that I came across in my life at that time. It really transformed. It completely turned my course forever.
That's very interesting. So I also know that you read a lot of philosophy and books related to evolution. But apart from these, what is that one genre that you really enjoy?
I read everything. I'm of course, extremely curious. There is really very little that I'm not curious about. So I read a lot. But yes, it does in fiction. It does end up being mostly science fiction. In non-fiction, I read everything.
So, for someone who has not read or wants to get into evolutionary biology,
Mhm.
what are the three books that you would recommend as a good endpoint?
Biology is all life, and understanding how it became so, how it came to be, why it came to be. It's a very profound question. It's biology is philosophy. There is really nothing that separates the two paradigms. We had philosophy uh, because we did not have biology. For the last 5,000 years that
Yeah.
philosophy existed, it was in absence of biology. Now that biology has come through, we can replace most of our philosophical questions with biological questions. So, and that's exactly what Louis Thomas does in his book Lives of a Cell. And here's an excerpt from it. There are some creatures that do not seem to die at all. They simply vanish totally into their own progeny. Single cells do this. The cell becomes two, then four, and so on. And after a while, the last trace is gone. Now, it cannot be seen as death because, barring mutation, the descendants are simply the first cell living all over again. The cycles of the slime mold have episodes that seem as conclusive as death, but the withered slug, with its stalk and fruiting body, is plainly the transient tissue of a developing animal. The free swimming amoebocytes use this organ collectively in order to produce more of themselves. So here, look at what Lewis Thomas is doing. He's negotiating with ideas about life, death, continuity, identity, uh, you know, and 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 whether or not there is such a thing as mortality or immortality. whether there is transience or permanence. He's taking on the biggest philosophical problems and answering them in one fact of biology. So, Lives of a Cell definitely would be a book that I recommend strongly. I've recommended this book to many of friends in the past, and they've all fallen in love with the book. Eh, Uh, if you see
Yeah.
the last couple of years of interviews of Amir Khan, he has multiple times mentioned that Lives of a Cell is one of the most profound books he's read as well. And I strongly recommend this book as an entry point. The second book would be the most popular book. Is a very easy read for that matter. It's a very accessible piece of literature, and it's really one of the most important pieces of not just evolutionary biology but also of modern philosophy. So that would be Richard Dawkins's book. It's The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
That'll be the second book that I would recommend. And finally, my third recommendation would be um, the, the simply beautiful work of one of the most unique evolutionary thinkers. That's Lynn Margulis. She's absolutely fabulous to read, and again, very accessible work for people who want to just enter reading evolutionary theory. And that would be What Is Life would be a good start by Lynn Margulis.
So I am aware that you do not like categorization of literature, but despite that, what is that one category that you secretly really dislike that gets on your nerves? What would that one category be?
Nothing really gets on my nerves like that.
So for me, I cannot read horror, but that is not something I absolutely dislike. But a young adult is something I really cannot read. So,
Really?
so yeah, I don't know. I have trouble reading it. But
I
yeah,
find I find young adults sufficiently charming, and I think that that's
yeah,
a it's a fantastic medium again to. I mean I don't mind any medium, any approach, any framework by itself per se, but it's when it's abused and overused in
yeah,
directions that are just completely out of control and become also all pervasive, that it becomes a bit exhausting. Like fantasies these days, like
yeah.
their everyone and their mother-in-law is writing fantasy, and that does become a bit exhausting when that medium is not used responsibly.
Right. Okay. And this also reminds me of another thing, and I think I'm very guilty of doing it. So if I read something, say, I read something that was a heavy read, I will immediately go and pick up something that's extremely light, say something like A Devil Wears Prada. And I will feel so guilty after it because I just finished reading a classic and now I was so overwhelmed. So I just read Devils Wear Prada. So that's like my guilty pleasure. What is your guilty pleasure?
It's something that I read when I was 15. It really was a it it kind of did what it does to every 15-year-old. It made me think in a certain way for a very long
Yeah.
time. For the next 3 years, I thought of myself as characters in those books. And I don't know if you know already by now what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guilty pleasure in my life being Ayn Rand and the Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged, Anthem, um, We the Living. These books, I've learned to recognize the profound errors in these books, and uh, and the and some of the ideas that are just factually wrong. That is just now that
Yeah.
we understand evolution so well, now we understand variation so well, some of these ideas are just absolutely factually wrong. uh, but still become it's continued to be the piece of literature that has not um, stopped luring me completely.
So do you find yourself going back to these books even now?
Well, I mean, my guilty pleasure is not even does not even make me feel truly guilty. My truly guilty pleasure, the book that I open up in the middle of the book and keep reading it over and over again. That's something that I would have read like yesterday, just revisiting
Yeah.
over and over again. That's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas
Oh.
Adams, and that's simultaneously the book I love the most, and also the book that I keep going back to.
So I also read in one of your interviews that you enjoy a lot of Gujarati poetry.
Oh yes, I do.
So do you also have some regional recommendations for our viewers in terms of books or poetry?
Oh, certainly, certainly. Gujarati poetry is very good. Gujarati prose, there is the selection may be limited a bit. Uh, Poetry is vast. There is just so much work that has happened in Gujarati poetry, and especially uh, Gujarati poetry that has very strong Urdu influence, very strong influence coming from the ghazal form. There's a
Okay.
lot of Gujarati ghazal writers who have done incredible work, but my go-to poet in Gujarati language has always been Ramesh Parekh, and my contemporary and my dear friend Soumya Joshi. He's one of the finest poets in contemporary Gujarati poetry.
Do you have like a particular piece of literature, like say one poem that you really
Of
love
course,
that
of
you could
course.
recommend?
If you're going to indulge me, then I'm going to indulge myself.
Yes.
And Gujarati?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So it's from Ramesh Parekh. एक सुक्को दुकाड़ मारा देश मा छताए. Do you understand Gujarati?
No, I do not.
Okay, I'll try and
Yeah.
translate. It's an impossible translation. Um, should I do Hindi then? If
Anything that suits you.
Okay, I'll put a Gujarati poem out there nevertheless. Now that you've
Yeah.
indulged me. एक सुक्को दुकाड़ मारा देश मा छताए एक सुक्को दुकाड़ तारा देश मा छताए. There's an arid drought in my
Okay.
in my region, in my country, and there is a drought going on in yours as well. But and still, એક સુકો દુકાળ તારા દેશમાં છતાંય એક સુકો દુકાળ મારા દેશમાં છતાંય તોડીએ તડાક દઈ સુકો દુકાળ પછી આપણી વચાડ નહીં તારી પરસાળ નહીં મારી પરસાળ પછી લીલું ચટાક કઈક લીલું ચટાક તારી આંખમાં ને કઈક લીલું ચટાક મારી આંખમાં. It's of course a very very difficult piece of translation. It says there's a drought running. A drought is running your country dry, and the driest
Yeah.
drought is running mine dry as well. But still, let's take this dry drought and crack it up. That tadak is an onomatopoeia to tadak. It's like let's crack it up, let's break it, let's shatter it. And once we have shattered it, then there'll neither be your threshold nor my threshold between us, and all there would be will be something bright green in your eyes and something bright green in mine.
That's beautiful.
It's so beautiful. It's gorgeous.
So, okay, I was lost after that point. So my next question, do you have a preference as to what you read on? Like, I have a friend, he's a hardcore Kindle person, and I happen to be a paperback person. So what do you prefer personally, a Kindle or a paperback?
A Kindle.
Okay.
A Kindle it is for me. It's really one of the most important pieces of technology that I have bought for myself. It's really been so incredibly useful, because I mean, you said that you've read my other interviews and probably seen me speak
Yeah.
earlier, and you may have noticed that my mind wanders a lot.
Yes.
It's going in so many different directions at any given point of time, and I've benefited from it. I've not tried
Yeah.
not having to try and focus on one thing at one point of time has actually helped me in my systems thinking, in my ability to connect dots that seem disparate and unconnected. So I've allowed myself to be that person, to read whatever it is that comes to my mind at any given point of time. And there are at least two or 300 books that I need to carry around. And when I used to travel with like at least 6 to 7 books at any given point of time, because it
Yeah.
would be impossible for me to commit to that one book and read only that through the period of travel. So now I don't need to do that. It's just been so damn easy.
So how many books do you read at a time?
Well, nowadays I don't read books that often. I spend a lot of time reading journals, reading papers.
Okay.
So most of the time I'm reading scientific journals, and that's quite a lot of it. I pretty much read a journal a day at least, I think.
What was the last journal that you read? And what was it
S-
about?
So again, like what has happened increasingly is that Scholar.Google has made it super easy
Yeah.
to read anything. And because I was having this conversation with my dear friend Kunal Shah yesterday about the biology of money, about
Okay.
how money as an invention or as a piece of technology that we've invented has transformed our lives in more ways than we think it has actually. So yesterday that was what I was reading or reading upon. I was brushing up my skills on economic theory and things that I'd not necessarily spent as much time doing, which is I read a lot of Richard Thaler and his papers.
That's great. I'm afraid we're running a little short on time, but
Yeah.
so for the next 5 questions, I'll just do a rapid fire. And just give me one name that comes to your head when I say the following things, right? So my first question is your favorite book cover.
Oh my goodness. Damn, which was the last thing I remember liking? David Mitchell book, A Thousand Autumns of Jacob de Zoet. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful cover.
And okay, and what is your favorite dedication at the beginning of any book or
Leonard,
journal? It could be.
Leonard Cohen's note to the Chinese reader. It's
Okay.
it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
And and what's your favorite monologue?
I remember the one that I really particularly like. It's it's a monologue of um, from Angels in America, the lawyer who gives this monologue about um, when he says, "I'm not gay. I'm you know who I am," and then he talks about categories and he talks about
Okay.
um, uh, and he basically ends by saying, "I'm a man who likes to fuck other men, but I'm not gay." And it's in that he talks about the politics of these categories and what these categories mean. I think it's a um, very well crafted piece of literature.
Sure. So we'll just Google it and we'll put the
Yeah,
link in
yeah,
the description
yeah.
whenever we do this
This is
episode.
this is the first thing that came to my mind when like
Yeah.
it's been a while since I've read a monologue but this was the last monologue. I was introduced to the book by a very dear friend of mine, by Ariel Angel, and I remember she read this monologue out to me, and that's why I remember it so well.
Okay. And now I have two would you rather questions for you. So, would you rather read 50 Shades of Grey or Twilight? This is something that, so we told people that we're going live and Anand Gandhi is coming, and they wanted to know this. And
I have no idea. I
this
have no
was
idea
one
what to
question
expect.
that was there.
Why this question?
I'm not sure.
I don't
People were
understand.
just curious to know.
If this was a binary choice with like a gun pointed to my head and I did
Yes.
indeed have to like read something, I'd probably read 50 Shades of Grey.
That's
I don't even know. I can't believe I just said that.
it's okay. Would you rather read boring books or not read at all?
Not read at all.
Okay, that was interesting.
Hmm.
And my final question for this rapid fire: what is the best book adaptation in terms of films?
Films. It would be
Yeah.
adaptation. The film, or it pretends to be a book adaptation. It's not actually a book adaptation. It
Okay.
pretends to be the adaptation of Orchid Thief, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh, but it talks about the writer adapting the Orchid Thief in the book, and it turns out to be not an adaptation at all in some way. I think it's extremely charming. I think there are a bunch of these uh, non-adaptation adaptations that I really find extremely. Oh no! Wait! I didn't give the right answer. Uh, the
Yeah.
the the finest book adaptation screenplay would be The Prestige. Would have to be The Prestige.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And I have a few more questions. What about YouTube channels? Do you have any favorites?
On YouTube, I watch Key and Peele. I love their sketches. I think they're just absolutely brilliant. And what else? I really enjoy some of these epic rap battles. Um, uh, and of course, I mean, I use YouTube for academic work
Yeah.
mostly. So it's mostly lectures that I end up going to. So a lot of course, there's an amazing, for anyone who's watching and I've said this multiple times, but if you're watching this for the first time, watching me speak about these things for the first time, the one thing that I recommend on YouTube is this amazing lecture series by Robert Sapolsky on human behavior biology. It's nothing short of life changing. It's absolutely easily the finest lecture series that probably is
Yeah.
online. So just please watch it. It's absolutely fantastic.
Okay. And my last question for you would be, what is your favorite music album of all time?
So the music that I like I said, I have a very narrow music vocabulary.
Yes.
I don't listen to music very often. I listen to music only when I have to use it in my films, and otherwise sometimes when I write, I listen to some pieces of music on a loop, and these have not really changed so much. So it's a very narrow, really selection that I've stuck to for a very
Yeah.
long time. So Einstein on the Beach by Philip Glass is for me is
Okay.
easily one of the it comes closest to my internal cadence and rhythm. It just does the right amount of thing for me. Um, John Johnson's work in Arrival is absolutely gorgeous. That's something that I listen to on a loop very often while writing. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's these two would be my favorite albums.
Cool. So that was great, and I cannot tell you how big an honor it was for me. I'm overwhelmed right now.
Thank you. Honestly, Vani, I hope both of you really glad that you're doing this. Really, if there is anything that we need more than you know more right now is is dignified discourse, is platforms where young people can come and become each other's uh, critiques and points of reflection, provide peer reviews to each other, provide and facilitate each other's journeys through this healthy exchange of insights and ideas and things that have inspired them. So I really believe this channel is extremely important. Viewers whoever has tuned in right now, please do subscribe to this wonderful channel, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Anand. It was really great talking to you.
Thank you both of you.